Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Beijing panel here with CRCC Asia. My name is Andy Redlet, and I am the head of admissions here at CRCC Asia. I'll be just walking you through this presentation. It will take about 20 minutes or so. And if you have any other questions, just do feel free to put it in on this message board, and I'll be sure to circle around back and touch upon them at the end of the presentation. So again, we facilitate internship programs throughout many locations worldwide, primarily out in Asia. So our specialty really does lie in China. It's really where we got our start with these programs, and essentially where our bread and butter is, essentially. So we really feel really strongly about these programs, and especially out in China. And Beijing, in fact, is our longest running program. So we have a lot of experience out in Beijing. We knew it very, very well, and I'm really happy to take a deep dive in. Just take a little bit of background on myself. Again, I'm the head of admissions here at CRCC Asia. I've been with CRCC for about 3 years or so, and before that, I was actually a participant on the program. I actually did an internship program in Beijing. Did an internship at a tech startup for about 2 months. I was there, and so that was the second time I'd been to Beijing, and certainly opened my eyes quite a bit in terms of how everything works out there, and essentially how things really operate on the ground, especially great view into Chinese culture. So after that, I actually was a program manager out in Beijing, in fact. So I've gotten to know the city pretty well, and I'm more than happy to kind of walk you through not only our program, but what it's like living in Beijing for an extended period of time, and kind of what's all things to do, places to see, and hopefully to make your time as enjoyable as you can. So to start things off, why should you intern abroad? It's actually quite something that a lot of people think about, and it is quite a new concept. So there's a few different options what you could do. There's coming from a major university, Big Ten country, or really anywhere. There's so many international opportunities thrown at you. There's study abroad programs where you can study at a university. There's other options both throughout Europe and Asia, and there's a million different things that you can do. I like to say that internships really take the concept of cultural awareness really 10 steps further than any other program out there. And obviously that comes from experience and operating these programs myself, but that's just the main thing that we hear back from alumni and things along that nature as well. So it really takes that concept of immersion very, very far, where yes, you will be having that support system by CRCC Asia or whatever the provider is, but every day you're going to be really immersed in an environment that's about as real as it gets. It's literally the concept of putting your feet into the shoes of a worker on a place like Beijing or wherever you choose to do this program. So a lot of different benefits for it. Gaining a new perspective is one of the key ones with that, and that kind of goes along with any abroad program, but I kind of touched on this before, where you will literally get the most immersive, really most unfiltered viewpoint into how things really work, not only in the company or the work culture, but just living there and kind of seeing the ins and outs of daily life there for really extended period of time, not just taking classes, but kind of everyday life. Another thing that really sets apart internships and international internships primarily is developing connections, right? And you hear it all the time, when you enter the workforce, it's quote unquote, all about who you know. Well, to be fair, it is a little bit true in some cases, but especially in places like Asia and China primarily. China, in fact, has a phrase, or a word, I should say, called guanxi, which the closest, connection to that is connections, actually. That's kind of the main translation there, and they really hold relationships in the highest regard. And that's one thing that coming on a program like ours, we actually, the first day we actually give you business cards, and if you ask me, we give you much more than you need, usually several hundred, 250, 300 or so, and we pretty much beg you to use them. There's a lot of different platforms you can. Obviously, your internship with meeting with coworkers, or even clients if you're given that opportunity. But you're also, there's a lot of networking events and other opportunities that way that are always come up around Beijing, whether it be chambers of commerce hosting it, organizations like Project Pengya, or embassies in some cases too. And those are things that are always popping up around town. We're happy to help out if you're interested, but also something your supervisor may bring you to, give you the invitation to. And it's really all about it's really expanding that network. Whether you're listening to this from the UK or Australia, of course, America, Canada, it's very, very rare to have a connection and really a professional network out in a place like China. And that's one thing that, yes, coming back from an international internship, you're going to have a few extra lines on your resume. I think that goes without saying, but it should be a lot more than that. You should obviously have that connection with your supervisor, but hopefully come back, getting to know more people and, LinkedIn connections, WeChat connections in China, which we'll get into, with things along that nature. Touched on this a little bit before, but obviously expanding a couple more lines on your resume, and that kind of goes with it. Certainly just one aspect of the program as well. That Beijing name is certainly going to really come up when it's if it's job interviews down the line. I know as an alumni of the Beijing program myself, and when I did enter the job market, every single interview I was a part of, it was brought up. And a lot of times it even had nothing to do with the company I worked at, interestingly enough. It really had everything to do with the questions I would get is, why would you put yourself in that position? And what made you want to do that sort of experience? And it really gives you really an opportunity to portray this opportunity and how to benefit, how it benefited you, the motivation behind it. And that's something, again, that we work with you both at all three stages of being a participant. So pre-departure, where I was here to answer questions as an admissions advisor. Then on the ground too, we have full program support staff that really kind of helps you learn about the experiences as you're going through it. And then of course our alumni entering into our network of opportunities that way as well. We're always here to help out with help coaching you on how to convey this in a job interview and things along that nature as well. And personal growth and independence, this again, it kind of leads with kind of taking that concept of immersion 10 steps further, and also in regards to, it says a lot about yourself. I mean, not only just doing the program, but even showing interest in an international internship does say a lot about you. It's a challenging program. I will be the first to say it, and that's something that we're here to really guide you and kind of show you the way a bit. But a lot of the success on this program does rely heavily on really kind of you in a way. We're there to kind of give you the ingredients, but a lot of it, you really got to want to be here and you want to take it and look at each new day as an adventure. And again, we're here to help you out every step of the way. So now more specifically to Beijing. Again, I kind of touched on this earlier, but it is my favorite city in China. Obviously, I love the whole country. Every city's a little bit different, but I've always had a really special place in my heart at Beijing. And you can see on this slide, and this is a good representation of the new in Beijing. Beijing is one of those few countries that has a little bit of both in terms of the old and the new. This is actually the Bird's Nest Stadium, which was home to really the opening ceremonies and other events like track and field, and during the 2008 Beijing Summer Olympics. So this is just one of the many sightseeing, which of course we're going to go through in just a second. So what is Beijing? Obviously, a lot of people have heard of it in the news and whatever. Every one of the most well-known cities in China, and that's for good reason. It is the cultural and governmental capital of China. It has been for quite some time. Actually, the characters, Beijing is actually two characters in China, which Bei means north, and then Jing means capital. So Beijing, the direct translation, is actually north capital. If some of you are already familiar, there's actually another city in China called Nanjing, and Nan actually means south, and Jing, of course, is the same Jing in Beijing, which means capital. So south capital is what Nanjing is, and that was actually home to the capital for quite some time before it was moved up to Beijing several hundred years ago. But a lot of interesting history and culture. Just at these pictures here, of course, there is at the lower left here, you can see the Forbidden City, which was the palace of the emperor for many hundreds of years as well. And of course, probably the most commonly known place or structure in China is the Great Wall, of course, and there's several different parts you can go to around Beijing. There's parts you could walk on that are as little as 40 minutes or so away, and then there's places that you go to more authentic that are an hour and a half away, but we'll get into that a little bit more. It is the center of the government, so it's actually a very unique atmosphere to be in. So because it is a large international city, it's home, and there's a lot of opportunities here for internships, and whether it's in business, international development, which NGOs are very much a part of, marketing, tourism, there's a lot we can go into. So this is just for quick reference, kind of on a map of where Beijing is in China. If you were to look at the map of China, it almost looks like a chicken or a hen, is what it's commonly named. And Beijing is right there in the neck of it. So you can see it right there in red. Not on the coast, but it's about an hour or so away from the coast in that regard. So we're in the capital of China. We kind of alluded to this a couple slides back, but chambers of commerces, embassies, NGOs. China actually has very specific laws on nonprofits, which is actually why the majority of NGOs are based in Beijing, whether it's NGOs focused on the environment or social mobility or whatever it might be. These are where the vast majority of these are held. There's also a number of different reasons in terms of startups being close here, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Unicorn. So while a lot of times Shenzhen, China, which is down south, is known as the Silicon Valley of China, Beijing has actually right up there in that regard. There's actually a part of Beijing that's in the northwest part of the city called Zhongguancun, which is actually a free trade zone and home to, essentially that's the Silicon Valley of China. It's home to so many different tech startups, incubators, and that's really what that Beijing has really become known for, is becoming really a tech center of sorts, in addition to being this large international trading city as well. So in terms of unicorns, you can see it at the left that the entire country of China has grown its unicorn count by over 50% in less than a year. So what is a unicorn? A unicorn is actually defined as a privately held company valued at over $1 billion US dollars. So that's pretty darn big. And China is actually second to the US in the number of unicorns and number one throughout all of Asia, clearly. And China has been exploding with these, whether in the tech sector mainly, but also in other sectors as well, finance and fintech, as you can see, financial there. So it's really interesting and a really great area to go to learn a little bit more about entrepreneurship, but also other different industries within, not only China, but other booming. So Bitcoin is a very, and cryptocurrency is a very common part of the fintech sector, which is booming right now out in Asia, really primarily all over that region of the world. This is just another graph to kind of show you it's really emphasis on entrepreneurship in terms of the patent applications. You can just see on the left that China has really exploded in terms of those numbers over the last several years. So this is just another step in the right direction. And I myself interned at a tech startup through CRCC Asia, and I was exposed to a lot of different facets: the business side, marketing side, marketing strategy is a big one, but also just the general operations. And you really see what their work ethic is like, and it's something that really I took back from that program. So after the internship, of course, and I told you we'd circle back around, you can of course explore the Great Wall. It's one of the wonders of the world in terms of some of those lists, and it really lives up to it when you go there. There's a number of different parts of the Great Wall that you can go to, and essentially, whether there's even a part of the Great Wall where you can literally take a ski lift up to the top, and also like toboggan down. So whether that kind of help you out if you want to do more of an authentic experience where you can actually go one-night camping trip, but also in terms of handrails and a lot of more touristy parts. But where that help you out. There's also the Olympics, kind of alluded to that. You can see the bird's nest in the background. There's a whole Olympic village right in the kind of the north part of the city that it's great to explore. It's actually turned where they hold the swimming events into a big water park, and we're more than happy to kind of show you in the right direction and even lead events there as well. And Hutongs, which actually are my favorite part of the city, they're actually one-story kind of maze-like neighborhoods that actually were home to a lot of the peasants back in the day, even less as much as 100 years ago. Now they've really opened it up to a lot of different restaurants and shops that you can explore. One of my favorites, which we'll get to, is really one of the more commonly known, but they kind of bring back the true authentic part of Beijing, and really kind of, they're great for Instagram pictures as well. So in terms of the program, specifically with CRCC Asia, so the top career fields in Beijing, I do want to emphasize again, there's a lot that we can go into. It's certainly not limited to these three, but clearly business and entrepreneurship, there's a lot we can look into there, whether it's in the tech industry, the sports industry, or real estate. The list goes on and on. Marketing, if you think about it, every company needs a marketing position. And that's whether it's, again, the pizza place down the street or a company like Apple. So it really depends on, what type of industry you're looking to, but a lot of the skills you gain from that sort of thing is certainly transitions to a lot of different industries. And then, of course, NGOs. Beijing is, of course, the capital and the governmental center. So there's certainly things, there's certainly restrictions that actually place. And working in an NGO in China is actually a very unique experience, how they operate, how they abide by the laws and things like that, and really the different focuses and fields of what they're going into. And in terms of what's included in the internship, of course, they're included in the fee. We like to say it is all-inclusive. So obviously, your internship is 100% guaranteed on the program, and that's set up by our staff members that are on the ground in Beijing as we speak. Also, visa processing. We help you out with the full visa costs. We actually work with a visa agent that makes the process as simple as possible for you. We're really here to kind of walk you through that whole process and essentially get you started that way. A fully furnished accommodation is included, so there's no reason to bring sheets or even towels for that matter. Our accommodation is that we've been using for several years now. It's in a great part of the city, the 798 Art Zone, which I'll circle back around in just a minute. So accommodation, airport pickup, full orientation day, and induction day is what we like to call it, as well as events, business events, and 24-hour support. So I kind of touched on these as well. Obviously, the business seminar and networking event are all included. Here's just an example of what it looks like here. We do community outreach events as well. Usually that's one per week, visiting an orphanage or playing mahjong, as you can see here. Actually, that might be Chinese checkers with an elderly home, and also kung fu class, tai chi, things along that. Then weekend adventures, obviously the Summer Palace is actually a wonderful place to go, one of the more beautiful places. There's a big lake there, you can rent out a paddle boat. Sanlitun is known as more of kind of like one of the expat parts of the city. It's got, Apple Store, and really one of the more modern places, really wonderful place to be. And then the 798 Art Zone is actually one of the best places as well. They're actually old factories from the Mao era that have been turned into art museums. The CRCC Asia accommodation is very, very closely to that. So this is just a wrap up. Obviously, I appreciate you guys all looping in. I tried to get it around 20 minutes or so, and I hope that I was a bit helpful. Now, in regards to the questions, I do see that one came in, how the coronavirus outbreak may be affecting the program at the moment. Currently, again, our full staff on the ground, we're really taking things a day at a time. The concerns with that are completely warranted, and right now we are strongly encouraging that you explore other opportunities as well. Summer programs, if you would like to go to Beijing, are potentially open, but we always recommend just reaching out to us directly. Follow our website page on our health and safety page for the most up-to-date updates and how things are going. But we are obviously watching the travel restrictions very closely, and more than happy to answer any inquiries and whatever else comes up. More than happy to answer any questions as well. Well, thank you again for watching. And obviously, if anything else comes up, please feel free to reach us at internships@crccasia.com. That'll come to several of our staff members, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, usually about a 24-hour response time at this time.